Talking about liberty and talking about good news and fun stuff, Javier Milei, I mean, he's just rocking it. And everybody's starting to notice. And it's kind of embarrassing for a lot of people because it's hard to spin the data. Like, poverty is declining. First quarter, they just released the first quarterly numbers of economic expansion in a very long time. Inflation is at the lowest it's been in 4 years. And he's only just getting started. American, I think it was JP Morgan was estimating, JP Morgan Chase was estimating that the Argentine economy would grow 5.2% next year. And it needs to go a lot faster than that to get Argentina to where it needs to be. But that is a great start. And the recession that they had when he first cut all the spending, completely predictable, completely expected. He told everybody it would happen. They're now officially, we've known they've been out of it for a while, but now it's official. The numbers are in. Argentina's out of recession and zooming ahead and, beating everybody's expectations. And a lot of kind of centrist, left of center, left of center, and even right-wing economists are going like, whoa. I know how to explain this, they say. We know how to explain this. It's a miracle. Wait, all these left of center, right of center, just economists across the board, with the exception of a few free market economists, are basically like, how did this happen? I mean, Milei is a crazy man. Milei is a bad man. Milei is like Trump. Milei is he's going to kill the Argentinian economy. He's going to destroy it. He is going to take a bad situation and make it a lot worse. I mean, the negative stuff. And a lot of them stayed quiet in the early days because they were like, yeah, this is pathetic. This is awful. But they didn't go on record of it. But it was all there. And you could see it in their responses now. The responses now are, it's a miracle. We don't understand it. How did this happen? This is crazy. This is insane. And some of us, I don't know, about a couple of hundred economists around the world who know what to do about it. Don't give us this, we don't know. We don't know where economic growth comes from. We don't know how to create it. BS. Economic growth is just going to happen once you get the obstacles out of the way. Once you unleash the private sector, once you unleash the entrepreneurial spirit, and, assuming you're not in some country where everybody's so depressed and on drugs and so on that they're not going to rise to the occasion. All right, what is news here is not so much Milei's success. I've been telling you about the success for months now and predicting the success and expecting the success for months now. What's news is the surprise. What's news is the shock. What's news, the real question is, will anybody learn from it? A German member of parliament went on the parliament floor today or yesterday and basically lambasted the German economy for not doing what Milei has done, the German government for not doing what Milei. Now, she has been a free marketer for a very long time, but now she can point to Argentina. Now, she can point to something that somebody's done. Now, again, if you know anything about history, you know that Margaret Thatcher did, well, not quite what Milei has done, but something similar. Ronald Reagan did something similar to the U.S. economy, although that was started under Jimmy Carter. You know it's been done in other countries. You know that indeed the whole economic story of the West is a story of freedom, growth, not freedom, no growth. And you can track this over and over and over again. Everybody, by the way, right now, another interesting, funny story. Everybody's stunned by how well the Spanish economy is doing right now. Spanish. And here it's problematic because Spain has a socialist government. But what any observer of economics will tell you is that Spain is massively benefiting now from the fact that after the financial crisis, during the, do you remember the European crisis, the Greek crisis, the Euro crisis of 2011, 2012, Spain was forced, because it was on the euro, it wouldn't have done this if it was not on the euro. It would have just printed money to escape whatever problems they had. They were forced to do massive bank reforms and massive, much more importantly even, labor reforms. And guess what? Guess what? When you move your banking sector to a little bit more free market, when you move your labor sector quite a bit closer to a free market, guess what happens? Economic growth. If you want economic growth in the United States, sustained long-term economic growth in the United States, what you need to do is massive deregulation. Get rid of whole regulatory agencies, simplify the regulatory process in dramatic ways, slash and burn the regulators, not the regulators, the regulatory agencies, their pages in the regulatory, and the pages of regulations. That is, in other words, what everybody knows, and most economists evade, and almost all politicians evade, with the exception of Milei, free markets work. Free markets work. And the closer you get to free markets, the better they work. And Argentina is far, far, far from achieving a free market. Far from it. It's still more regulated, more controlled, more taxed than the US. Although they have a surplus, we are running massive deficits. But direction matters. And God, it would be amazing, amazing. I mean, if Milei can win the parliamentary elections next year and have control of parliament, and then actually go out there and do all the reforms he actually wants. And then we can see the Argentine economy growing at 5, 6, 7, 8%. Not just in the short run, not just for a year, not just for 2 years, but over the long run, so that it can catch up with the relatively wealthy world of Europe, and maybe even catch up with the United States. It reminds me of when I gave a talk here in Puerto Rico about how to turn Puerto Rico into the Hong Kong of the Caribbean. And I said, it's easy. Just do what Hong Kong did. How do you turn Argentina rich? Do what Hong Kong did. How do you get growth in Europe? Do what Hong Kong did. Which means get government out of the way. In Puerto Rico, I think something like 25% of all people employed work for the government. In Hong Kong at the time, it was 5%. Fire 80% of government employees. And privatize whatever they were doing. Eliminate the regulations. Eliminate zoning. Free up land for development. Sell it to the highest bidder quickly, fast. Use the money to pay off your debts. Make it easy to fire people. When you make it easy to fire people, guess what happens? People get hired. Jobs are created. Because the risk of creating a job and it not working out and having to shrink the job goes away because you can fire somebody. If you can't fire somebody, you really have to be convinced, really have to think about it deeply before you create a job. So by making it easy to fire people, which Spain did 10 years ago, which Germany did in the 1990s, which explained much of its growth in the early 2000s, You create jobs. Making it easier to fire people creates jobs. So, and then as you shrink government, as Milei has done, shrunk government expenses, he has a surplus now, you start cutting taxes, as Milei is doing now. And by the way, one of the hallmarks of all of this, Hong Kong becoming Hong Kong, is what were tariffs in Hong Kong? Tariffs in Hong Kong? Anybody know what tariffs in Hong Kong? Zero. Unilateral. Zero tariffs. Import, export, trade. So again, it's not difficult to get the economy growing. It's not difficult to stop inflation. You know why inflation is going down in Argentina? Because the central bank in Argentina is not printing any new pesos. Nada. Nothing. No new money. In hopefully preparation for dollarizing the economy, the central bank has basically shut down the printing presses, or the electronic equivalent of the printing presses. No new money, prices stabilize. And prices are stabilizing. I mean, this has happened everywhere it's been tried. When other, I can't remember which country, but other Latin American countries had hyperinflation in the 1970s, they just shut down the printing press and the inflation went away. It's very simple. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon. If you stop printing money, you stop inflating. And the fact that it's happening fast in Argentina should not surprise again. Argentina, during the bad days, had a vast, what you would call black market, a vast illegal employment, businesses doing all kinds of things illegally. So you didn't have to pay taxes and you weren't restricted to capital controls and stuff like that. By rationalizing your economy, that is by freeing up your economy, you suddenly make that part of your economy. That all becomes official. Just that has a huge impact on economic growth. All the dollars. People were literally hoarding, i.e., keeping in a box buried in the garden because they were afraid it would be confiscated by the government. All those dollars come out of the box and go into the banking system. So it's not surprising. It's not surprising. It's expected, predictable. And the same thing would happen in any country. Now, all these articles that I'm reading about Milei, they all say, yes, this is short term. Of course, this is shock therapy. It kind of works in the short term. Is it sustainable? Is it sustainable? And he's kind of a nutcase, so will he destroy it all? I mean, here's an example. Whether Milei's libertarian shock therapy will translate into long-term economic growth and prosperity remains to be seen. Why? It was basically this kind of libertarian, whatever you call it, policies that made Hong Kong rich. It's these free market policies that made America rich. It's these free market policies that made the UK rich. Why would you doubt the long-term prospects when this has been the way the world got rich over and over and over again, and yet they can't break out of the mold? You mean the government doesn't make us rich? They can't get that. Can't grasp that. Can't really integrate that. He continues, stabilizing a chronically unstable economy isn't easy, but turning it into an engine of prosperity over the long run is much harder still. Is it? whether Javier Milei will succeed at the hardest task is very far from certain. Here's the skepticism, right? And yet, Milei's critics are surely on the back foot right now. More importantly, Argentinians have seen the worst of him and are still willing to give him a chance. The country seems to be grasping that for all his flaws, Javier Milei is meeting the moment. And this is how history happens. Why don't people learn from history? Why don't people get it? Freedom works. Free markets work. And if you want all the benefits of economic growth, this is the way you achieve them. You achieve them through liberating your economy. Now, I don't know if Argentinians want freedom. I don't know if we're there yet. Argentinians want economic growth. They want wealth. They want to get richer. And right now, Milei is showing them that the way to do that is through free markets. Do they believe yet in free markets? I don't know. And of course, as we've said over and over again, over many, many years, it's the free market is fundamentally self-interested, and that is what people fundamentally find offensive about it. So they won't learn from example. They won't learn from history. They won't learn from Milei. They won't learn from Hong Kong. They won't learn from U.S. in the 19th century. They won't learn from Europe in the 19th century. They won't learn because they don't want to learn. They don't want to believe that freedom actually works. It is too overwhelming. Would shatter their worldview. But when people say, oh my God, Milei it's working. Yeah, of course. Now, the only challenge was, could he get it done? But once he got it done, there's no question it would work. And now the question is, what next? Can he continue to get it done? As we've talked about, import and export barriers need to be eliminated. Capital controls need to be eliminated. The convertibility of the peso into dollars needs to be, made floating, the government should not control it. And again, all of that has to happen, I think, sooner rather than later. I think in the next few months, we've got to get rid of capital controls. Now that the economy's stabilized, it's growing, the government finances are stabilized. Now what you need to do, and now that you have the trust of Argentinians and they seem to be supporting, now what you need to do is eliminate all those controls. Tariffs, zero, but also Argentina taxes exports, which is bizarre. That needs to go to zero. And at the same time, you got to float, you got to allow the currency exchange rate with the dollar to just be determined by the market. Today, there's still an official rate and a black market rate. The official rate needs to go away. And the black market needs to be whitened, needs to become a white market, a legal market. And then, of course, continue with the deregulation. And that's what they're doing. They basically got an office for deregulation. They're taking in suggestions from common Argentinians about rules that they think they should get rid of. They've already received, I think, in the first 8 hours that the office was open, they received 1,300 suggestions. They're going to receive a lot more. There's a deregulation minister. And that is the big one. And then, of course, some of the radical things like privatizing energy and privatizing a lot of other things that Milei would like to do, and Parliament refuses. That is going to have to wait until he gets a parliamentary majority. But they're already working on privatizing a lot of companies, and there's a lot more government employees to cut. There's a lot more government departments to cut. I think all of that is going to happen. But for much of that, he's going to need parliamentary majority, and I think he's going to get it. So good things happening, good things going to happen, and I think this is of course, this is long-term sustainable. This is the only thing that is long-term sustainable. What isn't sustainable long-term is the mixed economy. And the smaller the capitalist element in the mixed economy is, the more unstable it is, the less sustainable it is. People are concerned with sustainability. Well, what's not sustainable is a mixed economy with very little freedom. That's what's not sustainable. The more freedom you have, the more long-term sustainable growth you will get. Go Milei. I'm a fan. And as you know, I'm a fan because, he's doing what he promised. I'm a fan because he doesn't mix it up with a bunch of libertarian BS. I mean, he talks about that he hates the state. He talks about a lot of kind of anarchist stuff, but his foreign policy is proof that he's not really an anarchist. Not really an anarchist. And he went after Hans Hep, whatever his name is. He went after him for criticizing him, and which was also great to see. So that's good, because he says he learned a lot from him, but then he was also willing to go after him, given the criticism. And his criticism was pathetic. First of all, he criticized his foreign policy. That was the main criticism, because that's what really animates the libertarian kind of that wing of the libertarians. It's pacifism. It's roll over and play dead and let the world roll over you.